of the conference. I would like to introduce to our chair Dr. Ravi Rameshchandra Shukla. He is the associate professor at the CCPPT at JNU. He is also the assistant director of MMTTC. Now I would like to invite Sudha to welcome sir by giving a token of gratitude.
Good afternoon, everyone present over here. Welcome to this post-lunch session. In this session, we are having 5 presenters who would be talking on a range of issues, topics, which is Indian classical music, dance, communication, Bharatanatyam, and some hermeneutics, reading the texts. I thank the organizers for the opportunity, and also, I don't know what inspired them to have me as a chair, because a person with shunya knowledge of music and dance, except for being an ardent audience. I love music and dance, but I have zero knowledge of music and dance. But I'm sure the speakers will bear with me and they will fill this gap that I present to them. Their knowledge will certainly help and enlighten the audience present over here. Music and dance are the eternal part of this land and its soul. It finds its expression in Indian chitta, the chitti, that is our conscience. So music is not what we just see in its commercial format. It is a way of living, like this civilization, like this dharma of this land, Hindu dharma, as a way of living. So music is a way of living, a way of manifesting the eternal happiness and eternal creativity of one's soul, a way of desiring, expression of the desire to create a beautiful world that can live and lead in harmony, in peace, and that establishes the fact that yes, we can have variations, like we have variations in music, variations in dance formats, in dance steps. It establishes the fact that yes, we can have variations, we can have differences, we can have different identities, different visions, but yet we share the one common vision that we need to create a better world, a beautiful world, a world full of rhythms, a world which abjures, which shuns violence in any form, hatred in any form. So, therefore, it would be a learning experience for me as well to chair a session on such a topical issue. For this, we have 5 presenters, and I'll be calling them one by one. So, roughly you can make a presentation for 20 minutes. Roughly a 20 minutes presentation would suffice. If you save time, it will help you to germinate some discussion, take some questions as well. But if you do not save times, then I don't think we will be left any time for the question answer session. But yes, and the first speaker will be Dr. Somsubhra Gupta. Dr. Somsubhra Gupta is from Swami Vivekananda University, West Bengal. He will be speaking.
So, very good afternoon session to respected chairs and all the delegates. Post-lunch commencement is always a challenge. My work, Indian Classical Music-Based Intelligence System for Therapeutic Cause, it is around 22 years old. We have got some 21 publications and 3 patents so far. I mean, collective works, not alone of mine. And we'll roughly cover this area. Artificial intelligence, pattern recognition, digital signal processing, brain model, image mining, music therapy. Right, and obviously on Indian knowledge system concept. So here are some self-works, prior arts. That is, we have a big research group that is even component from European Union and US, but I mean, originality is mine. You'll get all these works in Google, right? I mean, but not this combined work that I am presenting on solo on my name. So we have patent title System for Medical Treatment Following Music Therapy and Method Therein. Another patent, interactive technology-driven low-cost. This is a very, my second patent is very alarming in the sense, I mean, on music periphery we are researching. Here we are trying to present how Indian classical ragas can be, utilized or used. And we are largely motivated by Raga Research Center, Chennai, so we gratefully acknowledge them. We initially don't have direct research on classical ragas, no, but at later point of time we did it, right? We have our publications in Elsevier, Springer, IEEE, everywhere. Here only, some few illustrative publications are mentioned beside patents. The second one is actually in MIT Solve 2024, it appeared, you know, MIT is the numero uno engineering establishment in the globe. As long as the present world order remains, we have to respect that. And then Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is our message. We don't disrespect any. But definitely we are rooted, deep rooted to our culture. That's how it is. Now, first AI-based system, intelligence systems, AI, artificial intelligence based systems we have developed, devised, right? In the second work, Learn with Noodle is actually a little bit deviated. That is to transfer primary education to the underprivileged children, for which we have developed a device. It's our patented. That is called Learn with Noodle. It's actually a iterative acronym. Learn stands for Learn, Earn, Academic, Relaxed Network, and Noodle stands for New Normal, Object-Oriented, Dynamic Learning Environment, right? And here we can see it. Just a minute. Sorry. I think just a minute. Oh, somehow it's missed. Sorry, I cannot show you the proof of what I'm speaking in terms of MIT. You can directly search and get it in the net. Anyway, AI-based system, what the features is contained by our presentation right now. It's an AI-based system that we are going to present. 2 broad domains, right? That is artificial intelligence and music therapy. Next, Indian classical ragas. World of music is an ocean, right? So we didn't have, knowledge base on Western solo or Western classical. We have typically focused on Indian classical ragas, right? That's what we did. And then non-surgical category, because directly surgical ability, maybe it's there, but it is beyond our scope of research, right? But at the same time, for the, kindly agree that all of us used to relax with music, relaxation, recreation, apart from mantra, meditation and all, right? If we go beyond, relaxation and recreation happens with music. And for disease like obsession, depression, compulsion, we have got over 90% case result. I'm showing you the data set and all at the later part, right? Now, music effect, let us now get into a gist that why music? And what's the logic or technology behind, a technical factor behind therapeutic cause. Music tunes the heart, controls or makes emotional adjustment by controlling secretions. In a word, music is an universal language that have impact on various spheres of human existence. Let us kindly agree that. Now, what about its, that is the summary of the title that I am going to trying to present. Why therapeutic cause and how? Any living human being is always in a state of vibration. Loved up. Physical or mental disorder means deviation from the state of vibration. Deviation from the original state of vibration. The logic here, music is nothing but sound wave. Can we effectively employ it to restore the original state of vibration? That's the idea. So music we use as a counter vibration to use original state of vibration of any living entity. That's the logic behind the entire effort and attempt, right? These are the point number 7, 8, 9, I guess, right? So we move. This is very important. The seeds, where from it came, Sham Veda, root. Even as we know, nowadays everything is opened up in the era of digital image processing and machine intelligence. Even artificial intelligence has got its root, Kritrim Buddhimatta, in the works of Nāṭyaśāstra of Maharshi Gautam. It was mentioned. In fact, when Swami Vivekananda gave his lecture, first lecture, 1991, the renowned Chicago address, right? 18 September, I guess. Right, after his lecture, Professor Nikola Tesla and George Bull's wife met Swami Vivekananda. And Vivekananda gave them the idea of ether. Nowadays we are debating a lot, right? CMOS versus cosmos. But what is the root? Swami Vivekananda told to Nikola Tesla and George Bull's wife. That's a fact, right? Now, similarly, actually, we talk big about AI and MT, but these are all rooted to our traditions, and I think I put the reference, so we can, before entering into it, right, and Vaisheshik Darshan of, although AI term exactly directly we didn't find there, right, of Kanad, right, Rishi Kanad, right, there it's all about decision making, Vaisheshik. That's how it is, right? Anyway, here are some deep-rooted facts, right? Whatever I'm speaking, the illustrations beside each and every, right? In Vedas, music has an important place. Shama Veda, I think I already have covered it. Music has a divine beginning and it's closely linked to Hindu deity. In both the evolution and Genesis, right, are the references given. Scholars, musicians, and religious scriptures differ in their classification of the periodicity of historical genesis and development. The inconsistency to the least precise periodicity in the Indian music classification, the pre-Vedic period began before 2000, and here you get roughly 6 period classification of evolution of Indian musics, right, and all are much, much before Christ. Now, according to a different episode, Lord Shiva has created music in his many guises, right? That our thought perception and our, eternal philosophy and, trust, belief, faith, whatever we term, right? According to a different incident, many Hindus believe that Lord Shiva, who is healer of many issues, formed the syllabi Nada. Now, these are the key words to be very explicit in terms of our context to music therapy, the Nada, right? Then from his navel sung, I'm not reading, I don't want to read it out, right? Om, Oma, Srishti Sthiti Vinash, right? The Auma. And if today I'll request all of you, right, to just go through YouTube, right, and just give us a search there, Sound of Brihaspati. Just before we have Mahakumbha, 144 years of rotation, the sound of Brihaspati is, if from that sound you can get in YouTube directly, right? It's just a reverberation of Om, right? Just go through if you can, please. Right, so these are the keywords, Nada, right, Oma, then stands for Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, in the source of music, musically accompanied sounds through the Nada or Shabda that emanates from it. One name for Omkar is also Tanshwar, right, that is symbolizing God, right, Tanshwar is nothing but, Omkar. According to Vaishnavites, on the another school of thoughts, Lord Mahavishnu being supreme eternal God of the entire universe, music is also his creation, right? Among the Vedas, Rig Veda is considered the oldest Veda. Rig Veda scriptures everything, basically, right? So we have given some few, citations here in terms of our root or seed of the music as a healer. Now, in terms of origin, right, music in India has a formidable theoretical base of great antiquity, roots, blah, 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 nada, shabda, I think I have introduced the keywords. And in terms of, I mean, every god, you get some, I mean, right, two things were common. One is arm, right, although we are taught from the very childhood, ahingsha param dharma, right, that's great. I mean, we should respect it, right, but each and every of our gods having arms, right, especially the motherly god, right, and because self-defense is actually inculcated there, right, and in terms of, musical instrument is there, right, shankha, we got in Ganesh hand, right, likewise, I mean, it's a fact, and Veena of Ganesh Saraswati, for example, right. So here are some more, references or inputs in terms of technical acceptance of what we are trying to establish, right. 1017 Vedic Sanskrit hymns, then 10,600 verses, Gayatri Mantra to be very explicit, right. At each and every day morning we start with it because of, some vibrations and, the junctions, right, 108 of, right, bones and their connects. We need to rise them at each and every morning through Gayatri Mantra. Right? These are all, techno-scientific facts. Right? And in terms of Gana, Gatha, I think some more reference you'll get, and I think we should go to the technical part of it beside the EA part. And this is what I was trying to insist, I was not finding at that time. This is a word learned with Nehru, right? And it's in Massachusetts site, website cannot be, I don't think website is readable, but it's a, this is the first time they have, accepting some works of our origins, the West, right? So, in terms of AI-based research, obviously I have a very huge word, right? I should withdraw it, right? In terms of, there are many, traditional Bharatiya knowledge system acceptance by the West. Here, there are many Western people who are presenting here even. But in terms of getting into SCI, or we don't have much, except some Srimad Bhagavad Gita related management publication in Springer. So when you work on core of Bharatiya knowledge system and GATE is accepted by MIT, right, I guess they are recognizing us, something like that, right? And here is the device, and this is patented on us, right? This entire is devised by me and my scholar, right? The chief design is ours, right? That noodle, right? Using which we are transferring primary education to the, again, using music, like Brotochari, Anganwadi, we know, right, how to transfer knowledge. Although here the main reason is therapeutic cause, not the underprivileged children learning, but again, it's an our extended work, so that is why. Our main work is mentioned on that pyramid. Musical remedy-driven intelligent system is what we developed, right? Song pattern detection and singer recognition, because you know, if you want to heal someone with, music, then we must know, apart from the school of medicine, like music therapy here in this case, we are guided by Raga Research Center, Chennai, right? Anorexia for Ahir Bhairav or insomnia for Malkos is their creation. We didn't get into that research. We have used typically that, right, for healing purposes, right? But then here comes one thing, like I belong to West Bengal. I hope you have heard Rabindra Sangeet, right? Very famous. Globally, Tagore has won Nobel Prize out of that. Not only that, there are other literary works also. So in general, the people don't like Rabindra Sangeet to be sung by X and Y and Z singer. No, they have a specific, singer demand. If we want to say it in a broad-based way, like once we go to the bhajan, right? Bhimsen Joshi has one school of thought, Anup Jalota is another school of thought, right? So, and there are debates, whether it's a Geet or bhajan sort of thing. We are not inviting any, controversy here or any different here. Like, that's there, right? What's the actual bhajan or something like that to classify. Even in terms of ghazal, right? Mehdi Hasan, Ghulam Ali, we have that variation, right? But there are people who like some of them, not all of them, specifically some. And unless and until you play that music, they are not influenced by some other singers. So both song type and singer are very essential. And effect of sound wave of human brain, later on we enter into the research, actually music made what kind of effect in human brain. Right? First of all, we are following the school of thoughts like Raga Research Center, Chennai is fine. But we want to, experiment, actually it happens or not. Yes, we indeed went to MRI or magnetic resonance imaging or CT scan, like computer tomography scan, up to that extent, right? We actually researched later, but I mean, we should not pretend or to be very, some elementary observation based on that we have, because that's not exactly our research, right? Then our research is to devise this artificial music doctor, the last one which we have devised. It was applied, it was started, begin in 2004, and we got patented 2014. So exactly 1 decade job. And the second or third patent again after 1 decade. So it roughly took 9 or 10 years to accomplish each and every phase of our work, which we are claiming. And perhaps Massachusetts recognized us for that. We don't know, right? And here is the system. Patient don't come to the doctor and say directly the symptoms. No, it's only an introduction. Doctor, it's a 3-tier architecture. Doctor extracts the symptoms from the introduction. That's what happens. Then from symptoms to disease. It's a very complex mapping. It's a many-to-many mapping in mathematics, which we don't term as mapping, we term relation, because mapping is always many-to-one or one-to-one. So one-to-many or many-to-many, and exactly what that signifies. More than one symptom can one disease in common. In our terms, we can understand. We don't get into a computer science or mathematics to understand that. Mane 2 or 3 symptoms can belong to same disease. Again, one symptom can belong to more than one diseases. So that's a many-to-many mapping we are trying to talk here in this, right? Set of symptoms to set of disease. And sorry. Yeah, right. And then the diagnosis part of doctors, that is from disease. You have to get into music module, because we use music as a medicine here, right? So it's typically a 3-tier architecture. That's the system we have formed, and we got it patented on 2014. So the steps I have explained here are mentioned in 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is the algorithm basically, step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 4 is mentioned below, I already have mentioned. And here are some music remedy for diseases. This is the Raga Research Center's Chennai guidance. This is the table of healing through music therapy. Which raga for which disease, right? And definitely we refer the school of thoughts from where we have got. Later part we have a research regarding that, effect of sound wave of human brain. Right, so they create some environment, right, separate, and literatures are there, you can refer. Music therapy. Music therapy is right now a very common entity. There was a point of time it was a research right now for milk productivity of Jersey cows, right, or even paddy. In monsoon session, what happens, there is a air, and that affects paddy crops and paddy growth is higher. These are all establishment facts, right? So no more under scope of, these are established research basically. And music therapy is a different thing, but use of music right from Rajdhani to, Vande Bharat to, even in local trains there are at the eastern part, and many big hotels you'll find very, soothing music that is being played with little vibrations, right? So here is our observations typically. Okay. Sung type detection and singer recognition that we have spoken about. This is the algorithm's flow chart. Algorithm we already have told previously. One thing is for sure, we have used on Indian perspective only. Right? We have done the thing on Indian perspective only. Right, that is the Indian classical ragas extended to devotional bhajan thumri. Here are the digital signal processing. Analysis part of it using GW wave, and later on we shifted to Adobe Audition. These are mostly tested using Adobe Audition. Right, spectrum analysis to be very explicit, and algorithm, right, flowchart is mentioned in the other side. I am afraid it's may not be very readable. That's why I already have explained it, right. There are many parameters like age group, gender, race, because music liking, right. If we just play Michael Jackson or Justin Bieber to an elderly person, we doubt how they will take it, even from the Western concept. Likewise, right, especially the child, right, they are not very responsive. young age group, not very responsive to classicals, bhajan or ghazal, although part of them are, right? They are more matured than we think. Now, in terms of parameters and performance indicators that we have mentioned, right? How we formed our database, that is also mentioned here. I don't think it will be of many relevant with all respect to your all backgrounds, right? Getting into technical detailing, what we achieved in 10 years, I cannot represent it in 5 or 10 minutes, right? That's my inability. And these are various steps that we did, right? Basically music domain, music kind, classical, modern, pop, folk. Because therapeutic cause, you don't know who, especially when the matter is relaxation or recreation, this is a vast domain. But obviously obsession, compulsion, depression, compulsion is very specific, right? And the logic until sound waves are produced and introduced, brain images are decoded. The next two procedures will be repeated, reducing the iteration span, right? That the algorithm we have mentioned. This is actually the brain model we have worked. This is the brain model part. Later on, we actually enter into it, means how much effect the music makes in mind, right? In terms of magnetic resonance imaging and CT scan, both computer tomography, we did, right? Music sample, it plays. Effect, we have scanned sound wave on various frames in human brain, and we just correlate our observations with established fact. This is not discovered by us, obviously no, but we have got anonymous sort of observation, what is mentioned here, right? In brains, what part, how musical training saves the brain. Now, in terms of brain images, these are all our original scanned images, as we mentioned, right? Capturing brain images on the mining. But we definitely tried to do some sort of image mining from brain, means you actually play the music, take the person into the context, right? Scan his CT scan or MRI, right? CT scan is a comparatively easier process. MRI is not as easy as we are claiming right now. It was tough, and our MRI volume is much less than CT scan. But MRI gives better result always rather than CT scan, right? In terms of our research also, right? Now here are the result we have found. And we have got an enormous case result from the 34 to 55, this particular age group, in terms of Indian classical ragas, right? And 729 prescriptions were there, which we, obviously, if you ask, is it live? No, because we need aims, because it's a serious issue, the treatment, right? So it's a simulated case studies. We have captured the prescriptions, and we have gone through the resultant diagnosis of the doctors and compared. Based on that, this case result is there, because anything medical, if we want to make it on live, we need AIMS or IMS permission, right? So that is why there was a stop for long term for getting our job recognized, but ultimately we have got the patent and then series of publications, right? Now, and two of my scholars are working on that, right, to be very explicit. So I'm sorry for taking more time, 3 minutes, I think I have crossed it. Conclusion, roughly, Indian classical ragas for therapeutic cause is what our, objective, multi-objective, obviously, intelligent system, some type of singer decognitions. These are the multi-verticals we have worked, and effect of sound wave from human brain, right? So here are some reference that we have made use of, right? Some of works, these works belong to us, right? This you find in Elsevier, IEEE. Mostly scope, all are Scopus or SCI indexed, right? So reference continued. Yeah, few references we have given actually. We have lots more reference. Selective reference, meaningful here we have given. And with that, oh my God, it's going on. Yeah. With that, we gratefully acknowledge the host of this particular international conference for providing us the opportunity to present this work here, right? With that, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful work. And not just in ancient India, but in ancient Greece, Egyptian, Chinese civilizations too. And as it is said, wherever Shushrut, the great Vaidya, would go, the herbs would speak to him. So it is nothing but his knowledge of those herbs. So the knowledge of music and knowledge of various other methods of healing and curing lies in India. All we need is efforts like put in by Dr. Somsubhra Gupta and his friends, his researchers, to align it, to prove it scientifically, and develop application methods and technologies. Thank you, sir, for this enlightening paper on music. The next presenter is Dr. Methil Devika from University of Kerala. She'll be talking about recalibrating Indian classical dance in unconventional spaces. May I request Dr. Methil Devika, please?
Yeah, can you bring it here? No, it's okay. It was tested. Namaskar to all of you. My topic, recalibrating Indian classical dance in unconventional spaces. Basically, PowerPoint is just for me to be, to remind myself of what points I may be missing. I will just be talking. I think that would be great. To give you a brief about myself, I'm an Indian classical dancer with 44 years of practice, and for the past 3 decades, I've been only doing my own work. I have around 53 original works to my credit. So, which means responsible on my end to tell you how it is based on my experience that I have actually taken it out to unconventional spaces. The term Indian classical dance itself is very dicey when you talk about classical today, because I have heard a lot of gurus or a lot of my colleagues saying that Indian classical dance can only be appreciated by people, who know it, and we can only perform for people who are aware of it. And for me, that is a big negative. I have always found that it is the onus of the dancer or the artist to actually bring it out to people. When you classify class and mass, I was mass before I got a guru, right? At the moment I got a guru, I understood the complete paradigm of Indian classical dancing. Similarly, I would like to, this is my responsibility to also try and convert the mass to the so-called class. Today it's all permeable spaces, right? For that, sometimes you have to be mass also, the artist. And that is very, very important if you have to understand the psyche of your audience. Now, when I say unconventional spaces, I talk about spaces where Indian classical dance is not usually done. It does not include sabhas or proscenium stages where you get to see it. It can include other spaces where you don't find the application of the scriptures or anything there, but it can be applied, right? So, the methodology that I follow is take examples from my own work, and I'm an action researcher doing experimental work and creative work. I'd like to call myself a practitioner academic and not an academic practitioner. And always being a practitioner academic, you are creating and you have to align it to theories. And when my mentors ask what theory are you bringing, I say, I generate my own theory, you can make it your own theory. It comes out of that creative spurge. Now, how do you theorize that? I find it extremely difficult as a creator, and that is the conflict I have with the English-led, perhaps academic surface that we have in India today. So if you want, I can take any theories. Maybe I can take Edward Soja or Max Weber or Victor Turner and align it to my work, but I don't think that's necessary. I do that only if it is mandatory. And the medium that I do for this work is Mohiniyattam. Mohiniyattam is a very, very, as you all know, I don't know if many of you know, it's a graceful dance form of Kerala. And it's very subtle, it is minimalistic, it has slow movements, it has grace. But this work can be applied in any other art form from any other place also. And that is why I think the templates used here are very, very universal. Now, what is the action that I'm going to do here? One is, the space here is the cognitive space of the performer. The second is perhaps the disability spaces, the community space. The third can be the physical space or the geographical space. And the fourth is cross-domain space, like science and education. When I did a work with Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, ISRO, I ideated a work called HASTAS. HASTAS means hand gestures, but it also is the acronym of hand articulation for spaces and technologies from the heritage and aesthetic sciences. Now, this is something that was ideated by me in ISRO. And so I've taken one segment of Indian classical dance, which are the mudras. And now we find the mudras in an aesthetic space like dance. Now, how am I going to take it from that into a more functional space like science or education? At Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, of course, we worked with human-computer interactions, and we had the algorithms built. I also created a minimum astronomical sign language for the zero gravity environment using a very cryptic ancient language. And then from there I moved on to something called education of certain scientific principles where you find learning difficulties among students. And for example, I take the 8 planets. I'm just going to brief you. Take the Ashtagrahas. Our Navagrahas are always geocentric, but what science says is the more heliocentric astronomical system, the Ashtagrahas, and I wanted to introduce that into classrooms where children found it very difficult to understand the basic features of the planets, right? So what I did was I compiled the basic features of the planet from the NASA site and compiled them into Sanskrit and into the indigenous language of Kerala, which is Malayalam, and used our gestural language for spatial temporal learning. So what happens is all the planets have certain common features. I'm saying not common descriptions, but certain parameters, common parameters like the distance from the sun, how it rotates, what angle it rotates, what is the terrain made of, and what is the atmosphere made of. And all these became common parameters. So I'll just give you an example of how Mercury. So the sloka for Mercury was written in Sanskrit. I had a Sanskrit scholar. And if you see the translation, it's a crazy translation done by ChatGPT. Yeah, let me just see. I'll just give you the hand depiction of what it says. It says that Aditya Bhagam Eto Marigilai, which means Mercury is right next to the sun, and it is smallest, and the air is very minimum. It has rocky terrain, but it is quite a wonder that it does not have a satellite. It's a very simple thing. I don't know if the sound is working. Let's see. So we implemented, for all the 8 planets, we implemented these kind of exercises in classrooms, and children knew by heart all the 8 planets by the end of the session, right? And not only that, even even in our own dance galleries, in our dance classrooms, we are not aware of all this, right? We only know the depiction of Navagrahas, but to be more practical, more scientific, if you see, these are all taken from the astronomical sign languages. This is what they do for showing satellite. So this is what they do in the astronomical space. So from this space, I decided to venture out into the temple space. Now, when we talk about temples, see, we classical dancers during Corona, we were so reliant on organizers giving us spaces that when we didn't have spaces, we went out of money, we went out of opportunities. And I thought maybe I should try a work in a temple. And when I did that, I found that there were such new things that came out. So I went to this temple called Thiruvallathur temple in Kerala. And what I initially said was, I will dance in front of the Sanctum Sanctorum. And it was planned with 2 orchestral members from my team and a small work on the goddess. And we will do it in the natural lighting in front of the Sanctum Sanctorum. Everything was agreed. And suddenly the first intervention comes. So the idea of this work is chance operations. That is, how do uncertainties affect or challenge my work? I won't say challenge or affect. I would like to call it an opportunity for me to create, actually, instead of seeing it as challenges. So they allowed it, and that morning they said, no ma'am, you can't dance in front of the sanctum, you're a lady, and there are issues. And I said, okay. And then finally I spoke to the Tantri, and the Tantri, see, temple is a tantric installation site and becomes very challenging for creating work, because they have such rigid rules. And the Tantri or the priest said, no, you can dance, you don't document it. I said, without documentation, then there is no work. And then he said, you use anywhere else. And suddenly when I saw the sprawling architecture of the temple right before me, and I thought, maybe I should use this to good effect, right? This is all in a single day. And then the next challenge that came was internal, where I think, okay, there are 2 deities in this temple. One is Annapurneshwari and one is Bhadragali. And I'm thinking, maybe I should work on that. And I took the slokas from the temple, and on the spot I created work. Then the next spatial intervention was when they said, we can't have your musicians, you'll have to have temple musicians. And I said, oh God, they may not be familiar with my kind of work. And then finally, I very strategically told them, okay, can we have Kathakali musicians? And they said, okay, that is fine. And I had 2 musicians I've never seen in my life before. And I included the 3rd one from outside. So now, these musicians, being Kathakali musicians, they only know the Kerala style of playing the rhythms. They don't know the Carnatic style. So I had to actually again co-create something based on the Kerala style of rhythms, which means my 3rd musician goes out of the picture because he does not know Kerala rhythms. So I bring another person who brings that. And now is the space, this entire architecture is there, and then I found out that this lighting is not enough. We'll need extra lighting because I'm moving from one point to the other. And then also we need more cameras, and they're just giving me this many minutes, right? So, but I must tell you that what was intended and the final work, you will see it greatly written, with great detail in my thesis as to how this happened, right? But the final work was entirely different than what was imagined. And I will just show you glimpses of it. So this is a work that is basically co-created with the temple. I had no game in this. Whatever they threw upon me, I took it as an opportunity to innovate, which means I had to actually get out of my own rigid norms of what I call classical. And not that this is not classical at all, right? Yeah. So here I try and involve the Tantri himself to light the lamp, and therefore most of the problems were solved with that, the final stage. Do we have an issue with the audio? not seen them before. So I get down from the flight of stairs to another position that you find here in the temple. And those audience were not invited, they all just came there. And remember, it was COVID time. And then I keep moving to another direction. And I execute the Annapurneshwari Stotra there. And then I slightly move on to the Bhadragali Stotram. And I move to another space to enact the Mahishasura Mardhini. This thing is there on YouTube. You can see, call it Stri Preksha. It is called Stri Preksha. You will find the entire performance there. But I'll just... Yeah, so you can see that in the video. Now the next space for me is the disability space, which is very, very important. I did a work for the deaf community, and I understood that intervening my work or including their sign language as a part of my work would actually break what we call the fifth wall. The fourth wall is when the artist breaks it between the audience. Like here, accessibility was addressed in this work, but the fifth wall is when the differences between the audiences change. You will I'll just give you a teaser of that work I did. The audience there is a deaf. It's just 1 minute. So I just would like to conclude saying that any work done out of compassion, I think, works well. And it also helps you to come out of your own rigidities of what has been taught to you, and as a person also. And for example, the moment I learned their sign language, they became abled and not disabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Devika, for this presentation, audiovisual presentation, adding academic theories to it. Certainly, breaking such boundaries are a challenging task, and you have shown that how challenges can be converted into opportunities. And we would certainly love to see the performances in detail. As you suggested, it is available on YouTube. So we will be visiting and learning something it apart from enjoying it. The next presenter we have is Professor Siddhartha Singh from JNMPG College, Lucknow. Professor Singh would be talking on Nāṭyaśāstra as a text of semiotics of communication, decoding the universals of Indian dramaturgy. Professor Singh, maybe invite Professor Singh to present his work on Nāṭyaśāstra and communication.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar to all. It's good to present after such a beautiful presentation, and really it has made my task easier because lots of things she has already done, which I am going to present. It is called that Kaveshu Natkam Ramyam. In all the Kavya, Natak is more delightful, more Ramani. So today my presentation will focus on the semiotics and structures of communication, how these semiotics of communication has been represented or described by Bharat Muni in his Nāṭyaśāstra. If we talk about Nāṭyaśāstra, this text has been just discovered after 1894, and the proper translation of this text has been done after 1950s. So, but after 1950s, now a lot of work is being done, and this text has been acknowledged as an encyclopedia of Indian dramaturgy. So, Nāṭyaśāstra is a foundational text, on Indian dramaturgy. The purpose was creating this Nāṭyaśāstra, as Bharat Muni informs in his first chapter, to educate and entertain those who could not have an access to Vedas, especially the Shudra Varna. For them, this Pancham Ved was created. Now, the idea was to convey moral and spiritual values, and eventually it provides a semiotic framework for understanding drama. Now, the key concepts are Rasbhav, which I will talk later. Now, the key elements of this Nāṭyaśāstra is that Bharat says that he has taken all the knowledge to be his province. There is no knowledge which he has left in making this Shastra as an encyclopedia of Indian art. Now, there are 13 elements of dramaturgy. She has just shown a glimpse of Indian dance, which I will talk later. And there are three core concepts around which this idea of Natya revolves, that is Vastu Neta Rasastesham Vedika. Vastu is plot, the foundation of dramatic structure. Neta is obviously actor, the medium of histrionic representation. Rasa, sentiment is not a proper translation of it, but still I had to give a translation, so Ras is translated here as a sentiment. Now, the combination of Vastu Neta and Ras, this creates total theatre. And this concept of total theatre was inherent in Sanskrit theatre. In fact, nowhere in world you will find this concept. Later on, in 20th century, the Western scholars started thinking about this concept of total theatre. Now, in this art, Bharat Muni in his compilation, he is actually mixing Vedic as well as non and pre-Vedic art and culture. Both the things are there. Sir, as he talked about Dhruva's song, Dhruva and other things, which were pre-Vedic tradition in India also. And in this 13 elements, there are subdivisions, which are 98 broader subdivisions and numerous other subdivisions. And there are two theories of divine origin. The first theory of divine origin is the origin of Natya, and second theory of divine origin is about Vritti, which I will talk later. And there is one more thing, that dance has been given by Lord Shiva. Tando and Lasya, these are two dance, ma'am would be knowing it much better. And that knowledge of dance had been imparted from Tandu, who was a disciple of Lord Shiva. Now, in making of this Natya, all the emotions, sentiments, actions, movements, and state situations, all they combine to make Natya. So here are some definitions you can see. And I have cited this definition just to let you know that how Indian idea of art or imitation is different from the Greek idea of imitation, where Aristotle talks just about the imitation of action. Here, this imitation is the Bhavanukirtanam or Avasthanukirtanam, the imitation of the emotional stages of every sphere of life, not only just human beings, non-human beings even. So everything is to be imitated, lok vrittanukaranam, lok vrittikanukaranam. So nothing is to be left out of this Natya. So this is actually theory of imitation can be called as reperception, not just recreation. It is reperception, anuvavasaya, as in Abhinav Bharati. It is this idea is much expanded. But how this reperception is transformed into reality through imagination. So this is through a stylized formation of Natya. That is called Natya Dharmi. What is Natya Dharmi? So, ma'am just she gave an example of Natya Dharmi, how an idea, an emotion is to be transformed through histrionic representation. So this is through vrittis. Vrittis are called mothers or foundational elements of all forms of poetry and drama, essential for defining what is to be enacted and how. And what is vrittis? Again, this theory of vritti, as I told, it has a divine origin, and it is defined in chapter 22nd in Nāṭyaśāstra, where Lord Vishnu created these vrittis when he had to kill Madhu and Katav. So vritti is actually movements when he is stressing on the word. This actually resonates with his stressing on the earth to fight Madhu and Katav. That is called Bharti Vritti, and associated abhinay with it is Vachik or verbal abhinay, and Bibhats and Karun Rasas are there. I will explain Rasas also in the later slides. Then second is Satvati, the quality of the purity of mind. With pure conviction, he had to kill Madhu and Katav, and with the vaulting with of Lord Vishnu. So how he is endowed with this quality of firmness, that is what defines Satvati. Then Kashiki. Kashiki is often associated with Shringar, Hasya and Shringar. And this is spoken by well-dressed characters in Natya. And this is actually, this corresponds with the Lord's, how he tied his locks in a very lasya bhav, with lasya bhav. From there we have this vritti Kashiki. And then Arabhati, this is martial movement when he had to kill Madhu and Katav. Now, this is actually hand-to-hand fight with Madhu and Katav. This was the mythical, you can say, rendering of the origin of vrittis. Later on, I'm moving towards vritti has to work with itivritta. Itivritta is plot actually. So, vast or plot and itivritta. It is called itivritta in Nāṭyaśāstra. In Dashrupak Vidhan, chapter 20th, Bharat talks about Itivritta, And here, what we find that these are 5 avasthas, stages. This is theory of karma, how we proceed from one point to another point. This is earth prakritis or the elements of the plot, how every plot, whether it is in 10 acts or 7 or 4 or 5, if it is just 1 or 2 acts, 1 or 2, for example, pataka can be, you can skip pataka, that is a subplot. You can't have a subplot if it is a small natak. But more or less in all the natya, you have this structure. And these are 5 sandhis who actually joins these 2 things, avasthas and earth prakritis. Now, later moving towards it, the very important factor here is, again, I will compare him with Bharat, unity of impression, where Aristotle talks about 3 unities. In Indian, in Sanskrit theatre, the emphasis is only and only on unity of impression, because the concept of time here is not linear, it's cyclic time. And again, as far as space is concerned, there is no, you can say, entire Bharatvarsh can be taken as a space of Natya, but not beyond Bharatvarsh. This is what he recommends. Moving towards the theory of Rasa and Bhav, this is very important theory. Rasa is aesthetic essence derived from emotions, and Bhav is the emotions that generate Rasa. There is a kind of symbiotic relationship between Rasa and Bhav. They are anyonyashrit. They can't be separated. And there are 8 rasas. In Nāṭyaśāstra, he talks about only 8 rasas, and they are called Natya rasas. Later on, Shantras had been added by Abhinav Gupta. In fact, he talks about Shantaras, but he says that Shantaras is not for Natya. If Shantaras is to be employed in Natya, how will you show action there on the stage? So he talks about 8 rasas. But how this rasa is achieved? So he gives a theory here, these elements, they combine vibhav, anubhav and vyavachari bhavas. They combine and they create the emotional impact. Now I have made a chart based on the chapters Rasadhyaya and Bhavadhyaya. These are 8 rasas, but 4 are primary rasas. And these rasas depend on the 4 purusharths, Purusharth Chatushtaya, that is called. So these are primary rasas, Shringar, Veer, Raudra and Vibhats, and they are subsidiary rasas. So now these subsidiary rasas are actually, you can say, mimicry of these primary rasas. Okay? And the vrittis, again I have given which vritti is associated with which ras, and dominant characters, which kind of characters have to be employed, and abhinay, which kind of abhinay has to be employed. Now, what is important point which I found during my research, that modern psychology is, it can be aligned with the theory of rasa. When we talk about neural networks, the 3 important networks, salience, default and frontoparietal network, they can be associated with these rasas. I do not have time, otherwise I could have explained it much more better, because I think I have only 10 minutes left. So, coming to Abhinay, which is the most important part of Nāṭyaśāstra, because Abhinay is something which communicates each and everything, not just meaning, bhav, it communicates. Now, Bharat talks about 4 kinds of Abhinay, Angik, Vachik, Ahar and Sattvik. I think you have seen a glimpse of these Abhinay in the dance also. Okay. Now they are further divided into several parts. Now, this is very important factor which I have emphasized here. Effort should focus on Sattva, as Natya is based on Sattva. So, from gestural, bodily expression, verbal, costume and internal, bhava abhinay. Okay. Now, coming to the next slide. This, I'm just trying to provide you a glimpse of Abhinay, because it is such a vast concept in Nāṭyaśāstra. To explain each and everything is very difficult here. Now, Bharat identifies 3 kinds of gestures: Sharir, Mukhaj and Cheshtakrit. In Sharir Abhinay, he talks about Angas and Upangas, and then facial expressions and body movements. In every classical dance or in every dance, you will find the three elements, these three gestures or mudras. Now, these are further classified into shakhas, which again has angas, and angas, these are 6 major limbs: head, hands, hips, chest, slides, and feet. And these are minor limbs: eye, eyebrows, nose, lips, cheeks, and chin. In the first video, you would have seen her eyebrows. Okay. Now, from there, from that minute detail, every detail you can find in Nāṭyaśāstra. So, now these are combined. Everything is combined to produce an effect, a kind of effect which an actor desires to produce on the stage. How to develop these gestures, how they can be represented on the stage. Now, this is Shakha, the flourishes of gesticulating hands, that is mudras, and then Ankur. This again, when you are not able to say something, you actually give some angik abhinay. Without, for example, in the last slide, she spoke nothing, but she said everything. So this is through Ankur abhinay and Nritya. This is dependent of karnas and leading to angharas. So karnas are actually the smallest unit of dance, if I am not wrong, ma'am. Is it? Okay. So these are combined to encompass, again, these histrionic techniques. There are 13 head movements, 36 types of glances, that is called rasadrishtis. Then there are additional gestures, 8 types of glances, 8 gestures of eyeballs, 9 eyelid gestures, 7 eyebrow movements, and even 6 nose actions. Such is the subtle description of each and every, you can say, upangas in Nāṭyaśāstra, which is unparalleled in world literature. Then hand gestures, which is very important in any Indian classical dance. And there are 67 hand gestures: Asayukthast, Sayukthast, and Nrityahast. Asayukthast from single hand, Prakri Pataka, these are used, I think, in Bharatanatyam and Mohiniyattam, in every Indian classical dance. Then from 2 hands, what they are showing mudras. Yes, sir. Just, okay, I'm skipping these movements because I have to come to some. Then karnas and arm movements are also here. You can just read out. Then chari. Chari is again very important movement which involves foot, and then karnas, khand. These are all units of dance. And acting, because in acting there was also combats. In Sanskrit plays, there was also scenes of combat. So how to show that combat? Then types of charis are 3 charis, ground-based, then graceful airborne, and then 6 combat stances. This is again important, Vachik Abhinay. Now in Vachik Abhinay, Bharat talks about the plurality of India, kinds of languages and vernaculars, Atibhasha, Jatibhasha, then Vibhashas, 7 types of Vibhasha. He also talks about 7 kinds of Vibhasha. And if we go through the play of Shudrak, Mritchakatikam, you will find that in Mritchakatikam, Shudrak has used all the languages which is prescribed by Nāṭyaśāstra. Then Ahar Abhinay, costume and makeup. This is very important. In any dance form, you find makeup, and in every Sanskrit play, you will find costume and makeup because they are ornaments of Natya. And these are the how the decoration is to be done. These are 4 types of decorations. And again, I am skipping. This is the most important factor of the entire Nāṭyaśāstra, Bharat again and again emphasizes that Sattvic Abhinay is the most important Abhinay. Even where hand gestures are insufficient, you can use inner emotional expressions, voice modulation for rasa and bhavas. So this is the highest form of acting. And some involuntary reactions like tears, trembling or blushing, they can be used here. Now why it is so important? This is again I am leaving. The most important factor which I just want to highlight. This is obviously you have seen just in the previous. See, in 20th century, in early 20th century, this kind of manual of acting has been invented by Stanislavski in Russia. Before that, we don't find any manual. Somewhere in Japan and Thailand, we find some manuals, but they are based on Nāṭyaśāstra. What is the relevance today? See, in West, when there is a big gap and when people were actually fed up with the realistic kind of drama of the West, they are trying to find the concept of total theatre. Now this gap was fulfilled by Nāṭyaśāstra. Whether you find in Brecht the alienation effect or in Trudeau, Peter Brook actually experimented with the epic, which Aristotle forbids. And he experimented with Indian epic, with international cast. So Brecht's epic theatre and Arthur's theatre of cruelty draw parallels with Natya Dharmi style. Whether it is alienation effect or Parkaya Pravesh, they are mostly the same thing. Parkaya Pravesh is means to enter into the body with someone else. But at the same time, you must be aware of your own body. So that is alienation effect in Brecht. This is what is Parkaya Pravesh in Nāṭyaśāstra. So Bharat's insight on Sat resonated with modern psychological and neuroscientific findings, and it provides a scientific basis for performance and expression. What are the challenges? See, this is the biggest challenge for us, though we are talking about Indian knowledge tradition, but limited academic inclusion in modern curricula. This is the biggest challenge, and need for more translations and research. Still, there is no translation on the work of Ramakrishna Kavi, who devoted 40 years to produce an authentic text of the Nāṭyaśāstra. Still, we are searching a translation. So, more translations are needed, and some efforts has been taken up by NSD. Recently, Radhavalla Tripathi ji has translated Nāṭyaśāstra in Hindi. That this is the latest translation in Hindi. So that was all from today's presentation, and this is my conclusion, that it is an unparalleled treatise on dramaturgy, and its principles continue to shape Indian and global theatre. It serves as a bridge between ancient knowledge and modern performance studies. That's why it has to be taught in universities, in colleges, because Indian art, even Chitra Bhinay, I just missed that point because of the time limit. Chitra Bhinay, he talks about Chitra Bhinay also. So this text must be included in our curricula. Thank you. So within time?
Yes.
Okay. We would have loved to hear it for hours. Thank you, sir, for your efforts. Certainly, you must have taken a lot of pain during this presentation. As we can see, there's some problem in your legs. But it was mind-blowing presentation, sir. I'm sure that inclusion of ancient Indian scriptures in modern literature and modern knowledge system can add a lot of knowledge, can help us to understand things even far more better. Indians do not need to look here and there. They have everything in them. Only thing we lack is that we have to reclaim and reimagine our own tradition, our own knowledge. So with this, now may I call upon Professor Joseph Gonzales. Professor Joseph Gonzales is Director, ASK Dance Company, Malaysia. Professor Joseph will be talking on Malaysian Bharatanatyam performance of North Indian ethnicity. As we are aware that we share ancient and a long relation with East Asia, particularly with Malaysia, Indonesia, Jakarta, Sumatra, Java. These countries have retained the cultural relation between India and Far East for thousands of years, and it is seen in their lifestyle, art, culture, epics, music, and culture. So it feels like it's an extended family to us. So welcome, Professor Joseph. I invite you to present on Malaysian Bharatanatyam.
There has been tremendous depth of exchange, knowledge sharing of different practices, different scholarship across India and beyond. And I feel that this afternoon's previous sessions, previous talks, has actually been the perfect backdrop of what I wish to talk about. So I will get right into it, but before that, I'd like to add that I am a contemporary dance artist. However, my work has not been in the dance form of Bharatanatyam, but it has been in shaping the curriculum. So we just talked about the need for curriculum, the need for these kind of art forms in curriculum. At the National Arts Academy in Malaysia, where I was the head of the Dean of the School of Dance for 20 years, my work was largely about creating a curriculum, aside from teaching. I then subsequently spent 10 years in Hong Kong, where I worked in postgraduate studies. So, blurring boundaries of race and religion through Bharatanatyam in Malaysia. For those of you who may not know, because we are kind of a country that flows under the radar a little bit. People know Thailand, people know Singapore, but they quite often don't know what's in between Thailand and Singapore. And that's Malaysia, and we are made up of West Malaysia here, Kuala Lumpur, that's where I live, come and visit me. And then there's East Malaysia, separated by that sea. So the population of 33 million will be increasing. A multi-ethnic nation made up of Malays, Chinese, Indians form 6.7%. This is actually reducing in the last decade or so because of migration through some policies which are not favorable to Indians in Malaysia. I am an Indian, my parents are born in Kerala, but I choose to remain in this country. A total of 137 living languages, which is actually nothing compared to India, so I understand the difference between our nations. It's governed by a political party called Barisan Nasional that consists of component parties representing various ethnic groups. Now this is really important. Article 153 in Malaysia's constitution says there are special rights and privileges for the majority, the Bumiputra, sons of the soil, which is a term used to identify the Malays, the Orang Asal, or the indigenous groups, and Aboriginal groups, the Kadazans, Bajaus, and other ethnic groups of East Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak. These privileges include quota systems of 70% in public higher education, economics, the arts, and public office, which means I belong to the minority of only 10%, so it's much harder for us to get into universities, it's much harder for us to get jobs in the government sector, and to climb up the rungs to break these quota systems. Interestingly, I had a chat with Dr. Pranav, and he had done part of his research in these Malaysian policies which are prejudicial to the Indian population. And right now, today or yesterday, there's a big uproar in Malaysia because some people on the radio station made a mockery of the Thaipusam, the Hindu festival, the very big Hindu festival that goes up the temple in Batu Caves. It's a very famous temple for Hindus. And the radio announcers made a mockery of it. And today they were charged, and it's good to see that action was being taken. So in a way, it's always difficult that every day we have to fight for the right to exist, for the fight to have an equal opportunity. Generally, we are a very, very peaceful country because we just don't like to fight too much. We are also not very argumentative. However, on the 13th of May in 1969, there were racial riots, and a lot happened and changed in Malaysia after that. And one of the things was there was a national cultural policy. The cultural policy also has to reflect the population of the nation. The government patronage of dance focuses on representation of ethnicity, symbol of harmony, and as a political tool. So this is how the government views the arts. So when you go to Malaysia for a public event, a sports event, for the meetings like the G20 or so on, you will always have dance and there will always be representation. But it's very, very superficial. Now, as you know, I don't have to explain about Bharatanatyam to a learned audience here, but this just providing some background. And I talk about transnational Bharatanatyam from Oshea. The practice of Bharatanatyam endorses an allegiance to the homeland on the part of South Asians outside the subcontinent. Diasporic South Asian communities locate respectability and continuity in Bharatanatyam. It's not necessarily true for me, but it's true for most of South Indians in Malaysia who are Tamil from Tamil Nadu or Sri Lankan Tamil. And somebody mentioned Bharatanatyam in Sri Lanka earlier today, and there's a very fantastic book by this girl called Ahalya Sadgutnaratnam, who wrote about preserving Bharatanatyam amidst the wars of Sri Lanka. And it was very powerfully and well written, so if you're interested in that. The early Bharatanatyam dancers in Malaysia came from India. And these are some of the names, V.K. Sivadas, Gopal Shetty, and together with the Swami, a guru, they established the Temple of Fine Arts in 1981. So this is Gopal Shetty on the left, and that's the partner, Radha, whom he actually eventually married. And that's him. He's from Karnataka, I believe. And this is their guru, and this is the other couple who are from Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And they formed a very powerful institution that is still very active till today. Now, challenging the narrative are two people who you may or may not know. This is Professor Chandrabanu, Dr. Zamin Harun. He's very, very interesting and controversial because he's got an Indian name. But it's kind of a professional name. Because in Malaysia, Muslims are not allowed to convert and become non-Muslims. So they cannot convert. If I was to marry a Malay girl, I'd have to become a Muslim if I stayed in Malaysia. I could run away to Thailand, which a lot of people do, or Singapore, or Indonesia even, which seems surprisingly more free. And Ramli Ibrahim, he's got a Padma Shri from India, and he's also got the Sangeet Natak Academy Presidential Award. So an incredibly decorated Malaysian. And why is it that I feel that it's important about this? A non-Hindu Bharatanatyam dancer barred from performing in a Kerala temple. This came out in the newspapers, and it was very interesting because it reflects the practice and the experience of dance in Malaysia itself. And so my research questions is, because I was the Dean of the School of Dance at the National Academy, so what factors, if any, need to be negotiated when Bharatanatyam is incorporated into a tertiary dance program and taught to a diverse set of students? How does the practice of Bharatanatyam by non-Indian, non-Hindu dancers shift the representation of the original signs and signifiers of this form? to non-Indian, non-Hindu Bharatanatyam dancers represent new narratives of race and religion for Malaysia. I'm hoping somehow that people will see this as a space where there is unity, where there is harmony between the races and the religions. So I did this qualitative research that lasted like 5 years. Action research, you talked about it earlier, Dr. Literature review, of course, and so on. I won't waste time on that. So in tertiary education, when Rukmani Devi founded the institution, she revamped Bharatanatyam training by introducing the idea of a dedicated dance school where students learn in formal classrooms. And similarly, at Aswara, the National Academy, which was formed in 1994, I was one of the founding members of this institution when I was a young man and didn't know very much really. But somehow, along the way, you learn. And then we instituted a Bachelor of Dance. And in the diploma program, Bharatanatyam is compulsory. Of course, it may change now. I'm not with the institution anymore. And for the bachelor's degree, you may choose to major. So my philosophy always has been, in whatever dance form that comes into the institution, is that you must have the best. And therefore, I invited teachers from the Temple of Fine Arts to collaborate with us and provide the educational system at the institution. So these are some basic repertoires that are taught. Mr. Shankar Kandasamy and all the other teachers, many of them are actually very well known in India, and also graduates of Kalakshetra and other very famous schools from India. So our connection with India is very strong through the teachers. And Banks says that teachers need in-depth knowledge of ethnic cultures and experiences to integrate ethnic content, experiences, and points of view into the curriculum. And this was really my driving philosophy, to try to build a unified, harmonious school that represented all the ethnicities of the country and not just the majority race. And here we have students from our college. Well, not my college anymore, but these are all non-Indian students. And very, very interesting, Yunus, Hari, you can see from their names, they are Muslim, Baizura is Muslim, and these three are Christian. Now imagine Muslim boys and girls doing Bharatanatyam in Malaysia in this day and age, which is very, very potentially combustible. Because everybody is accusing them of, oh, you are praying to a different God. And then you become murtad, as they say in Islam. So there's a video, I think I'll just hopefully show it later. I'll go straight away to the findings and talk about the negotiations when incorporated into a tertiary institution. Now, when they do the Bharatanatyam Arangetram, there's a lot of prayer. Here, we do encourage all students to gather together in prayer, but we encourage the Christians, there are 2 Christian girls in there, and the Muslims to do their own prayer. So they have their own special prayer time. It is very important for them to understand the context, the words, as explained just now, that comes from the Nāṭyaśāstra. The teachers teach them very, very well. All my students know it far better than me, and they are sometimes teaching me what's the meaning of these different mudras. And it's very, very interesting, enriching experience of them to come into the space of another person, to come into the space of other races and other religions. And I think for me, that is beautiful. And this is the only thing I can do in my part with my skill and my knowledge to create a more harmonious nation. Adapting texts. So some students have felt uncomfortable with texts that refer specifically to Hinduism. So we always negotiate with the teachers. How can we do it? Is it possible to use a different text? So a lot of negotiation takes place. To be honest, in truth, most students are quite comfortable to use the original text. But sometimes we are worried who might be in the audience. that then will make a report to the police or the Department of Muslim Affairs. And then we, or I, will be in big trouble. So we try to avoid these kind of confrontations. Then the contact hours of the curriculum, Bharatanatyam, you know, it's very, very, very complex, as you all know, and I don't have to explain. So if we are doing Bharatanatyam as part of another performance, because of the complexity of the costume, you talked about the costume and the makeup, we always have to start the performance with Bharatanatyam, because it takes the longest amount of time to put on the costume and the makeup. Embodying the other and blurring boundaries. So this has been something that's very, very important. How do they relate to their Hindu friends? How do they relate to their Indian friends? What about the contexts of their cultures that are similar? How can we find a common ground that we can talk about and that we can celebrate instead of being fearful? The government today in Malaysia is making the different races scared. They are making the Malays scared of the Chinese. They are making the Malays scared of the Indians. So I'm trying to break down those walls of fear, finding interpretations and resonance, and so on. We understand the importance of Shiva, or the goddess Ganga. We respect their beliefs, although it doesn't have the same impact on us personally in our personal lives. They remain very, very Hindu. We talk about the difficulty about convincing parents that they can do this. The Arangetram better conditioned my body to adapt more quickly to the complex movements. And here are more performances that we did post Bharatanatyam. And here I say that it can be a tool for integration, alternative narratives of commonalities and multiculturalism, beyond contestations of ethnic identification, to embrace multiple cultures. These bodies are blurred. Hairi says, I do not see self or other. I see myself as a performer who's a devout Muslim but loves Bharatanatyam. I think that's beautiful. So if we have time, you can watch a little bit of a clip of these dancers performing. Yeah. You can forward it, it's okay. We just show a few minutes, yeah? How are we doing, Mansi? Are we doing okay? I don't know if this is going to work, but if I run out of time, you can just watch it on YouTube or something, right? Shall we just move on? Or do you want to see if we can get this? It's okay? Okay, let's see. stop there. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. And I also like to add, before I finish, that some of these dancers are currently performing with Akram Khan in London. They perform with Shobana Jaya Singh. They perform with Smita I can't remember her name. But some of these great Indian artists who are based in London. And they are chosen because of their multi-ethnicity. And they are chosen because not only can they do Bharatanatyam, but they also do contemporary, and they do ballet, and they do other art forms. So I must say that as the Dean of the School of Dance, one of the important things, aside from using Bharatanatyam as a tool for integration, was also to ensure that when the students graduate, they are able to get work. Because these are all full-time dance artists. So it was very necessary for me to consider the value of employability in designing the curriculum, aside from all the other things that I spoke about. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. Indeed, you encompassed politics, society, culture through the lenses of Bharatanatyam. Yes, Malaysia, as population figure shows, an increasing Chinese population is not just a concern for Malaysia, but increasing Chinese presence across the globe is becoming a concern because politics apart, India is a society of unity in unities. I put it like that. I don't say it's unity in diversity. It's unity in unities. It's a flow which is joined by different streams, and we absorb all the streams without any hassles, without any conflict. And our civilization of more than 5,000 years is a standing testimony of it, where we are not a religious society. We follow dharma, which means righteousness, which means upholding. Yena dhara sah dharma. Something that can be beholded is dharma. So we believe in righteousness, and that is why we do suffer from challenges, similar cultural challenges, religious challenges, but since our roots are the same, so negotiation is easy and comfortable sometimes. Barring few ruptures, we have had a smooth continuity of our history, tradition and culture, and Bharatanatyam is one of the symbolic representation of strong presence of India in the East, and not just Bharatanatyam, but contribution of Agastya Muni, the application of Siddha as an alternative form of therapy is pretty well known in the East, especially East Asian countries, and we need to promote it more. See, cultures will create bridges. Politics always gives walls. So we are happy that you are doing a great job in Malaysia. You are trying your level best to create a conducive environment rather than confronting the situation in a different way, as the world is seen to be in confrontation and conflicts. But you have chosen culture to develop bridges between civilization, between identities, between the arts and music. It will certainly connect the souls. Misguided politicians and parties are responsible for these situations, but they do not know that they are momentary. They do not last for long. But civilizations, cultures and values are eternal, hence they last for long, and they recapture, repair and rebring the societies and the cultures together. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this valuable presentation. Now the last presentation for this session is from Dr. Smita Agrawal. Dr. Smita Agrawal from Department of Political Science, Delhi University. She will be presenting on reading text through Bharatiya way. I dialogue with Skinner's method of understanding ideas. I request Dr. Smita Agarwal ma'am to please present her paper.
All the presentations which happened was about what is an Indian way of doing text, and we have come along a long way, I would say. But still in social sciences, there is a big dominance of Western theory. And this dominance of the Western theory has actually led Devika ma'am to say that, this is like an Indian way which I want to come out with, because the Western dominance does not give space to. And when I'm talking about the Indian way of doing text, I wish to highlight the certain nitty-gritties and the phenomena which is out there, but which was lost. And this was lost not only, I'm taking you back to the Macaulayan minutes, where English became the dominant system and language, Sanskrit language or the local languages was simply trampled over. It led to actually dying of the text. So this dying of the text happened not only in terms of the killings and the burning of the losing of the text, but it was also dying of the language, which is always considered to be a source of transmitting the ideas from generations to generations and from epochs to epochs. Okay, and as a result of this, what has happened is that the Indian academia also just got lost from these interpretations or from these ways of reading the text, which was already there. And even today we know more of Quentin Skinner's methods of reading text. And I'm specifically dealing with this. There are a lot of other ways of doing it, but my paper is located on Skinner's method of doing text, because in social sciences, this method has really become a great dominance factor in how to read text and how to read classics. When I'm talking about text, this is specifically reading to classics. Okay, because classics have their wonderful way of telling us what we need to do and why we need to do. So there is one way of doing it. And here I am trying to talk about the Bharatiya way of doing it, which is being propagated and where there is a huge science of doing these texts. There is a science of reading the text, which was lost for some time and now which is being reclaimed again and which is being propagated. And I want to bring in the nitty-gritties about certain things which are so seminal, which can actually contribute to enrichment of Skinner's methods, because where Skinner lacks, this Indian method of reading text comes in very helpful. Okay, so there is high time that Indian way of reading text gets its space. We don't want to displace, but it gets its space of reading the text. So with this broad line, I just want to highlight my paper in terms of why we need to read classics. Why we need to read classics. I'm talking about why we need to read classics. That's the first important thing which we have to deal. And the second important thing when we are dealing about why we need to read classics, there is also a way of telling us what are the two prominent ways of reading the text and where does Indian method of reading the classics comes away. So why we need to do it? Not all classics are read, but classics needs to be read because they are perennial. Certain classics are perennial. What I mean to say about perenniality is that there are certain ethical considerations which are there in the text and which is even relevant today. Okay, and those ethical considerations have to be taken in cognizance of when we are dealing with today life problems. The social sciences is meant to talk about good society. The life problems have to be dealt. So certain classical texts have to be read. And these classical texts actually talk a great deal about how a good life ought to be led with. Now in terms of leading a better life, classical text has to be read, but the problem is author is dead. If the author is dead, who comes in to help us read this text? Interpretation comes in here. And language is a one fundamental linkage of ideas which link me and you in communicating it. Now, when language is a very strong medium of tool that tells us about the words, their meanings and the relevance, then automatically what we have is we need to understand the art of interpretations. And in this art of interpretations, usually at the broader level, there has been two schools: textual methods and the contextual methods. In the textual method, the broad underline and the focus is on Terence Wall, and I'm coming from the social sciences background, that's why I'm using these. In your own different disciplines, you may have other scholars who are doing it. So my limitation is I'm only dealing with the social sciences method, which is very important, and it has become a dominant, concept way of dealing with it. So in the textual method, we have too much focus on just the words and the word's relevance. Now in this textual method, what happens is the interpreter uses its brain, and there is a lot of distortion which comes away. Whereas there is another which is the contextual method, where we try to go back to the context of the text and we try to unearth the meaning. Now, this may be possible in the case of languages which are continuing even now. But in India, the problem that was there, that Sanskrit as a language for a long time became dormant. It was lost either to English, or there was a more of a Hindicized version of Sanskrit. As a result, we have a vacuum which comes away. Nonetheless, if we go beyond this, despite the language being dead or it was there, we had codes. And those codes can actually throw light on the text which are there and which we need to refer to in order to attain a good life. Now the Bharatiya texts are the living traditions. Why this is being said? Because the living traditions, they talk not only about the past, but it is played out even in the present. And therefore, scholars who are working on the Bharatiya traditions, they have said that it is not just about the textual reading of the text, but it is also about the Katha Vacha Parampara. And the Katha Vacha Parampara is in form of folk traditions, in form of plays, in form of the common narratives which are played out, which are borrowed. For example, Ram Leelas. The adaptation of the Mahabharats, they and the various gurus and the sannyasis which are out there, which give interpretations to the Bhagavad Gita and other such philosophies of life which has its own bearings. So these two traditions make the Bharatiya text of interpretation a very living tradition. And fundamentally, the rules are also laid out very clearly, because they say that the ways of interpretation can be divided into two. One is by the learned scholars and one is by the commoners. The learned scholars follow a proper Shastra Paditi, which means relying upon Panini's grammar rules, relying upon the Vedangas, which has phonetics rules which are there and which decode the meanings and which also talk about the changing cultural, historical milieu of the text. So that is what is known as the Samvad, the dialogue. Whereas if you see in the Skinnerian method or the other kinds of methods, the dialogue is always between the present. It is always in terms of being the present. The dialogue never comes in form of it. Why? Because there is no such differentiation, or there is no explicit understanding that there can be one, a very specialized way of understanding or interpreting the text, and second, there is a very common person understanding of the text. And therefore, in India, the Bhashya or the ways of interpreting the text brings into the Samvad. And this Samvad has certain rules. How these rules are played out? This is played out in terms of pramans, inferences, vyakhya paditi, and it is also in terms of shabds, dialogues, words, meanings. So certain words has etymological senses. For example, ma'am had already talked about, the planets, the Ashtra, and when she was talking about the etymology. Okay, and this etymology, she adapts it. So that's the Bharatiya way of reading the text. When she is able to adopt it, this for the Western, especially the European and the American school of dominated kind of an interpretation, this has no space. This has no space. Whereas the Indian tradition has always talked about this, where you adapt to the common understanding. And why this is essential? This is essential because largely language is about a cyclical process which talks about understanding and producing it. It is giving back. And again it is coming back. So, even if Sanskrit is not the common language of everyone, still these texts holds relevance. So, knowing Sanskrit gives you an edge, but if you have this kind of a cyclical understanding, it gives us this scope. Therefore, in India, when we talk of interpreting the text, it is not just about the learned people, it is also about commentaries, it's also about kavyas, it is also about commentaries upon commentaries. Okay, and it is also about other such wide era of knowledge texts which is out there. So when we say there is a Shruti and the Smriti tradition, Shruti also holds importance and Smriti also holds importance because commentaries upon commentaries, they are all sources of knowledge in Indian way of looking at the text. And what we also have to take care of, that the principles of interpretations had already been laid down, and few of the examples are Yaksha, Gemini, Bharitari. They had said that when we need to talk about interpretation, we need to also handle explicit words and opaque words. And how do we do with the explicit words? We talk about the concepts of uses, the context, the speaker's intentions, and the addresses and the formulations which is there. At the same time, we also talk about the narrative of the word. So today, when Indian knowledge system, the government is trying to promote, what is the whole phenomena? The whole phenomena is understanding this changing socio-cultural milieu and saying that the politics is, the way we always used to say democracy is only the Western domination, but we have narratives which are being taught where they say that democracy existed in India very, very long time ago also, comes from this way of understanding the interpretation where the concept of meta rule is taken care of. So the essential principle of democracy is kept there, but which was lost because of certain politics and certain ways of losing the language, etc., is now being reclaimed. And what we also need to understand that the interpretation area of India is not limited to only academicians. We need to understand the interdisciplinary dialogue. And in this interdisciplinary dialogue, the different schools of philosophy also has to enter into dialogue. So it should not be that, okay, this is limited to Nyaya only. No, it should not be this. So an interdisciplinary dialogue has to be understood that can give focus on context, because in context it is prasang here. And what I mean to say prasang here, and what the scholars have tried to say, that prasang talks about pramans, it talks about pratyaksh praman, which is perception, anuman, inference, upaman, analogy, and abhihas, which is experience, and shabd, which is verbal testimony. So these all form the part of context which is explicitly written, it is implicitly there, and it also talks about the symbolic meaning. So here I just want to conclude my topic by saying that it's time that we understand that there has always been a way, Bharatiya way of reading the text, which is more holistic compared to the dominant Western traditions, and which need to be also becoming part of the curriculum so that students and the scholars worldwide are aware of. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for this knowledgeable presentation. We understand that we are facing we faced a challenge of losing Sanskrit as a language, but efforts like this through these seminars will certainly help in revival of this language, because Sanskrit is not just a language, it's a source of knowledge. Most of the ancient Indian scriptures have been composed, written in this language, and definitely the text makes a context. And in Indian tradition, we do not produce text without having any solid, strong context to it. And one more thing we should understand, that in India, we have had a different trend and tradition of writing the text and expressing our philosophy, which unfortunately the Eurocentric theorization and somehow left dominant communist theorization placed it as a mythology. But please understand, we definitely today following Gregorian calendar, but we have had our own calendar which is known as Panchang for thousands of years ago. And even till date, the Hindus follow that Panchang for their spiritual purposes, for their customary purposes, to perform any ritual, etc. So, will you call it mythology again? History is not something that is just written with a signature and with a date. History is something that enlightens us, that evokes, that provokes, that connects us with what has exactly happened. Now we are going ahead of the narratives that were set through Indus Valley civilization. We have gone behind. We have found Rakhi Ghadi as a civilization. We have found Sinoli as a civilization, which is proving that we have a more than 9,000 years history. We are a more than 9,000-year-old civilization. Will Eurocentric idea again term it a mythology, or an accident that has happened in a place, or some conspiracy that you buried your own things beneath the earth and unearthed it, you dug it, through your archaeological sources you are manipulating and producing a history? India did not believe in concocted history. We just created things and left it as it is for the time to judge. And our scriptures are time tested, including Bhagavad Gita, which was praised by Westerners like fine minds like Hegel also. So we need to, I'm not saying that the knowledge produced in rest of the world has no essence or sense. It does have. But only thing is that our knowledge believed in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We believed that the world is but one family. And in family, the sense of emotion and sacrifice dominates the sense of exploitation and sense of benefit. And that is why the knowledge that we created in medicine, through grammar, in politics, in economics, that knowledge belongs to whole world. We do not claim that this belongs to us only. If it can benefit anyone across the world, that is what this knowledge is meant for. So thank you, ma'am, for reconnecting us to this most quintessential area where we need to focus upon. Actually, original idea should not be buried, should not be discouraged only because it has a linguistic barrier. Today we have expertise, we have technology through which we can communicate, through which we can translate. And who knows, any original idea, if it can make the world a better place to live. That's all Indian philosophy, and Bharat as a nation, as an ancient civilization, ancient culture wants to share with the world. Thank you very much, one and all, for wonderful presentations. Thank you, dear volunteers, for assisting this smooth presentation. Thank you, dear audience, for your patience hearing. Thank you to organizers for having me over. Thank you.
I think we haven't just did justice with all the speakers by putting the time constraints, because they all are the experts in their field. So I thank all the speakers for their presentation. It's very enlightening for us. Now I request the chair to felicitate the certificate to the speakers. Dr. Devika. Dr. Smita Agarwal. Professor Siddhartha Singh. Now I request all the presenters to please felicitate the certificate to the chair.
This is on behalf of you all.